Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is Angelina. Today's show is going to be very important and very interesting. And you better pay attention to, okay? Since 2025, many of you have certainly seen terrifying videos circulating online about telecom fraud compounds in northern Myanmar and Cambodia. Love burials, water dungeons, electric shocks, right? People applauded, saying that the Chinese Communist Party had finally struck hard. But have you asked yourself a question? These compounds have existed more than 10 years, and the forces backing them have almost without exception come from Zhi and Shi Zhijiang, once celebrated as national security contributors, suddenly become death row prisoners who must be eliminated. In today's live stream, we are going to talk about what the media dares not to report. The truth behind this so called righteous action, the internal black on black struggle, how the money laundering channel left behind by Meng Jianzhu and Wang Qishan are being seized and reassigned, and how the Trump administration has entered the game to intercept trillions of dollars in dirty money. The truth is far more brutal than any movie. Okay, so we're gonna analyze this issue from the following aspects. First of all, what is telecom fraud and what's the real essence, and then the profit chain behind it, and then the forces that supporting this telecom fraud, and the real reason. Finally, the end, the most important part, the real reasons China and the United States are cracking down on telecom fraud. Right? So, telecom fraud, formerly known as telecom and internet fraud, refers to criminal activities in which perpetrators use telephones, text messages, WeChats, and online communication tools like such as WeChat, Telegram, and WhatsApp, etc., to fabricate false information and carry out remote, no contact fraud, inducing victims to transfer money. At present, the global hardest hit areas of telecom fraud are concentrated in border regions of Southeast Asia, especially northern Myanmar, eastern Myanmar's Mawadi area, as well as parts of the Cambodia and the Laos. And these regions are often controlled by warlords or suffer from weak government authority. They form so-called a lawless zone that provide a natural shelter for criminal syndicates. And the common methods they were using is such as pig butchering scam, building long-term emotional relationships through social media, then luring the victims into fake cryptocurrency or investment platforms. They also use high salary deception, using the high paying job offer as bait to lure victims overseas into scam compounds and forcing them to engage in fraud activities. And this often includes organ trafficking, prostitution, kidnapping, and human trafficking. With technological development, these organizations now use AI face swapping, voice cloning, and deep fake technologies to dramatically increase scam success rates. On average, AI linked scam proceeds are 4.5 times higher than those of traditional methods. According to recent reports from the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime, UNODC, and several international think tanks such as ASPI and the U.S. Institute of Peace, their annual revenues from telecom fraud industry in Myanmar and the greater Mekong region are estimated at 12.8 to 23 billion US dollars per year. According to the latest 2025 economic analysis, since Myanmar's formal economy has sharply contracted following the 2021 coup, telecom fraud and other illegal economies have become economic pillars. Relevant studies estimate that telecom fraud output is already equivalent to 23% of Myanmar's official GDP. And in some regions of neighboring countries, such as Laos and Cambodia, this proportion is even higher. These activities are also deeply integrated with cryptocurrency. Blockchain analytics from Chain Analysis in its January 2026 report, 2025 crypto crime report clearly stated that in 2025, global losses from cryptocurrency scams reached approximately 17 billion US dollars, an increase of nearly 40% compared to the previous year. Of course, these figures contain substantial understatement. Understatement, I'm talking. The actual amount of dirty money involved is far greater than this. For now, we will just leave this as an open thread. Keep watching. More revelations will follow. Certain parts of Southeast Asia have not only become epicenters of telecom fraud, but also core hubs for capital circulation and money laundering. As we know, the telecom fraud industry first emerged in 1990s. With economic development, its scope has expanded from Taiwan and Hong Kong to Guangxi and Guangdong in communist China, and then extended into Southeast Asia. And today, parts of the industry have even spread into the Middle East. Throughout this process, it has deeply integrated multiple profit dimensions, including financial fraud, money laundering, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and organ trafficking into a single industrial chain. Let's talk about the human trafficking first. That is the upstream, the raw material procurement, quote. Human beings are no longer treated as lives, but as tradable and depreciable living assets. Through fake recruitment and transport, victims from at least 56 countries are lured to border regions such as Thailand and Myanmar. Victims are referred to as piglets. Once inside the compounds, they are openly priced, ranging from tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of RMB and sold to telecom fraud companies. When victims perform poorly, resist strongly, or when compounds face crackdowns, they are resold to other compounds. And At every layer, human trafficking premium profits are generated. Then comes the financial fraud chain. That is the midstream, the profit engine. Okay. Financial fraud is the industry's primary revenue engine. Victims under threats of electric shock, beatings, and sexual violence are forced to work 12 to 20 hours a day, carrying out pig butchering scams, investment fraud, or gambling fraud. Within this chain, there exist dual victims. One side is the forced laborers compelled into criminal activities, and the other is ordinary people around the world whose life savings are stolen. So now the interest chain, the other part is the money laundering. That is the core circulatory system at the central link. Okay. Money laundering is the blood system that sustains this massive criminal empire, designed to serve the connection between funds and criminal acts. Telecom fraud groups use underground banks, money brokers, USDT, and even charitable activities to launder funds. The recent case of Chen Zhi, founder of Cambodia Prince Group, who was arrested by the CCP, is a textbook level example of global transnational crime. Okay. Chen Zhi was originally from Fujian, Communist China, later became a Cambodia citizen, and was granted the title of Duke. The Prince Group he controlled was once regarded as one of Cambodia's largest real estate and financial concession enterprises, and was deeply involved in local Belt and Road Initiative projects. However, in October 2025, the United States and the United Kingdom jointly sanctioned him, identifying him as the leader of a transnational criminal organization. The U.S. Department of Justice accused Chen Zhi of orchestrating the largest investment fraud in history and seized approximately 15 billion US dollar worth of Bitcoin. Using original dirty money accumulated through telecom fraud and then human trafficking, Chen Zhi laundered funds through extremely sophisticated high-end methods. He orchestrated the largest investment fraud in history, exploiting the anonymity of cryptocurrency by dispersing up to like 15 billion US dollar in Bitcoin through distributed methods to several all tracking chains. And these blood-stained funds were rapidly converted via family offices in Singapore and Hong Kong into office buildings in London, Picasso paintings, and top-tier private jets. Chen Zhi even cloaked himself in the identity of a duke and a major philanthropist, attempting to gain political protection through social infiltration, concealing the exploitative nature of an entire industrial chain that treated human beings as mineral resources. And it was precisely because Chen Zhi's laundering channels, Bitcoin accounts, and a Belt and Road background that deeply alarmed the CCP. well, Xi Jinping mainly, that he was deported back to China on January the 7th of 2026. Now let's talk about the organ trafficking, which is the downstream, is the residual value extraction part. And this is the darkest and most terminal segment of the entire profit chain. When victims can no longer generate fraud revenue, when their families are unable to pay ransom, and when their physical condition can no longer sustain the intensity required for black mine slave labor, organ trafficking becomes the criminal syndicate's final means of extracting profit. These brutal realities clearly show that the criminal activities within telecom fraud compounds, they do not exist in isolation. They perform a bloody closed loop system for full chain exploitation. Then you have to ask for yourself, what are the forces behind telecom fraud? To understand who supports telecom fraud, we must first look at who the primary victims are. According to the latest reports from international organizations, including the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, as well as civil society documentation collected by initiatives such as the Star Homecoming Project, the sources of telecom fraud victims are shifting from regional to globalized. Below is an analysis of victim origin proportions and characteristics. The core victim source come from Greater China, including Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, accounting for over 70%. And within this group, mainland China accounts for the vast majority, approximately 80 to 90%. Then Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, up approximately 15%. Then the international victims, including South Asia, Central Asia, and Africa, approximately 10%. Europe and the United States, approximately 5%. Okay. Traditionally, most telecom fraud compounds were located in Southeast Asia. Under intensified crackdowns, some compounds have begun relocating to the Middle East. So notably, telecom fraud compounds are often packaged under CCP national strategies or grand economic concepts. For example, figures such as Shi Jinping openly promoted their so-called Asia-Pacific New City projects as part of the Belt and Road Initiative, assigning agreements and conducting global investment promotions under this banner. Using labels such as special economic zones or industrial parks, they applied for government land and electricity support, even claiming to engage in blockchain, cryptocurrency, or artificial intelligence development, while in reality, they're just using these technologies to upgrade criminal tools. So who are keeping the telecom fraud compounds alive? The long-term existence of telecom fraud compounds relies on protection and support from multiple forces. They are local separatist forces and armed groups. Local clans such as Ming Xuechang family in Konkan, northern Myanmar, which directly operated fraud compounds by controlling militia forces and use violence, including live burial, against those who disobeyed. They also have these rebel leaders or warlords, such as Sochitu, who controls parts of Kayin state and provides armed protection to compounds in exchange for enormous profits. There's also the transnational criminal organizations and gangs that include traditional triad bosses such as Inguju of Macau's 14K triad, who established Hongmen networks in Southeast Asia and set up areas like the Dongmei Zone as core transit hubs for money laundering and fraud. There's also international money laundering networks. Figures such as Ji Xiaobo and Dong Jiming, originating from junket operations, who controlled listed companies and overseas casino license to provide circulation channels for telecom fraud funds. And there's also the corrupt political elites and the black gloves. Some local government officials or former mayors, such as Guo Huaping, identified by Shi Zhijiang, were accused of facilitating criminal groups or engaging in espionage activities. And there's also red-hatted businessmen, figures like Shi Zhijiang, who claim to be acting under national security directives, used United Front work or project coordination as a pretext to build illegal overseas industries until public outrage or internal conflicts forced them their abandonment. So from this mapping of support forces, a common pattern becomes clear. What is it? The largest group of victims are Chinese people, and the supporting forces behind the telecom fraud almost all originate from within the CCP system. Behind them, the shadowy hand of the Chinese Communist Party looms unmistakably. Now, we have to ask, why? Why China and the United States are cracking down on telecom fraud now? From the above analysis and data, one fact is clear. Among telecom fraud victims, Chinese citizens account for the highest proportion, with 60 to 70% being Chinese. And in recent times, videos of live burial and torture circulating on social media have greatly inflamed public anger in communist China. But this cannot be the core reason of the CCP is cracking down on telecom fraud. These spectacles serve only as a excuse me. Only serve as a face-saving tool for the CCP and as propaganda to glorify Xi Jinping's public security apparatus. The CCP's real objectives are political purge, seizing high-level CCP money laundering channels, and destroying evidence. As early as October 17 of 2021, Mr. Miles Gore stated that so-called ethnic conflicts and factional struggles in Myanmar were in fact orchestrated by Meng Jianzhu. And the northern Myanmar faction itself was essentially Meng Jianzhu's faction. Using the Mekong River as a strategic anchor, Meng Jianzhu established China's second strategic support point in Southeast Asia. Meng Jianzhu controlled Myanmar's jade mines, emerald mines, and deliberately instigated Myanmar's internal wars, political conflicts, and ethnic warfare that resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths. And these conflicts were primarily initiated by Meng Jianzhu, executed by Sun Lijun, with involvement from the CCP's political, legal, and state security apparatus. And after the money was secured, Meng Jianzhu joined forces with Wang Qishan and Jiang Zhicheng to launder funds from Macau through Macau. And most of their money flowed out through Macau. As Moscow revealed during live streams, that investigators from the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, comrades within the system, told him they once clawed back over 320 billion yuan in a single day. Investigators went to Macau, summoned key figures, and displayed all the evidence on screens and forced them to watch. The money was wired back 320 billion yuan in one single day. And through Macau alone, they recovered over 1 trillion yuan, equivalent to 150 to 160 billion US dollars. Moscow stated that Xi Jinping was determined to cleanse Macau completely. And from 2012 to 2016, Macau generated 500 billion yuan in tax revenue. Just imagine that. Then you think about how much gambling money flowed out, openly and covertly. This just shows how deeply blackened the CCP's public security, prosecution, and judicial system were under Meng Jianzhu. Meng Jianzhu's underworld operations via Macau and Mekong guns resulted in tens of thousands of deaths, pure black-on-black elimination. And these revelations reveal the sheer magnitude of interests and money involved. But remember, these figures were taken before 2021. Today, the scale is unimaginable. So that is why so-called UN or think tank investigations haven't even scratched the surface yet. Then you might want to ask another question. Why the CCP must silence witnesses through a telecom fraud crackdown? Well, in recent years, Xi Jinping has been purging and absorbing these blockchains tied to Macau and Southeast Asia. At present, we do not know exactly how much Xi Jinping has already seized, nor whether he is still in the process of closing the net. But one thing is clear. If any evidence or witness related to these crimes were exposed before the people of the world, the CCP would be nailed to the pillar of history as an international mafia organization and terrorist syndicate. And many compound bosses such as Shi Zhijiang and Chen Zhi were deeply involved Belt and Road Initiative projects and even claimed to be acting under instructions from state security organs. Then Shi Zhijiang once hinted that he had met Xi Jinping personally, and he later publicly exposed internal secrets, including identifying Guo Huaping, a CCP spy operating in the Philippines. For the CCP, the only way to deal with this problem is to use the banner of cracking down on telecom fraud to physically sever overseas criminal groups that are intertwined with internal regime forces and to kill witnesses. And more importantly, Xi Jinping must seize control of the money laundering channels belonging to figures like Meng Jianzhu and Wang Qishan. Every year, hundreds of billions of trillions of yuan flow out of China. As long as this money remains overseas, it constitutes a massive existential threat to Xi Jinping. According to an official CCP announcement on January the 29th of 2026, members of Kong Ming family criminal syndicate in northern Myanmar, including Min Guoping, etc., a total of 11 criminals were executed. And shortly afterward, a CCP background social media account, Niu Tanqing, published an article stating that the Ming family, one of the four major families of northern Myanmar, had been entirely exterminated. And it further stated that 5 members of the Bai family had been sentenced to death in November of the previous year, and the Wei and Liu family had entered the public prosecuting stage. Many criminals from the 4 major families of northern Myanmar were still awaiting the CCP judiciary's extreme punishment. So the CCP is deliberately creating at least 2 unprecedented firsts. This is the first time in CCP judicial history that a massive number of criminals have been captured abroad and brought back to China for trial. This is also the first time in CCP judicial history that such a large number of overseas criminals have been sentenced to death. Well, this has nothing to do with justice being upheld, okay? Because the case files are not released. How many people were involved is not disclosed. How much dirty money was involved, money laundering routes, organ trafficking lists, none of them have been disclosed, right? So this is clearly nothing more than internal black on black elimination from within the CCP mafia system. Now, why the pace suddenly accelerated? After executing the northern Myanmar families, the CCP clearly accelerated the pace of deporting mid-level figures back to China. Figures such as Shi Jinping and Chen Zhi were swiftly escorted back to the CCP. Why? The sudden acceleration. Because the Americans have entered the game. After President Trump returned to office, the United States began participating openly and at a higher level in law enforcement actions targeting telecom fraud networks. Let's just take a look at the US actions timeline. All right. In 2024, during the Biden administration, this period was primarily an early warning and intelligence gathering phase. The US government estimated that in 2024 alone, American citizens lost at least 10 billion US dollars to Southeast Asian telecom fraud. That is a 66% increase from the previous year. Targeted cryptocurrency scams surged sharply. Then in 2025, Trump administration takes action. From May to July, the US Department of Justice began frequent joint law enforcement operations with Thai and Cambodia police. Cambodian Prime Minister Juan Magnet signed orders to clear telecom fraud groups within Cambodia. And then September 8th, the US State Department and Treasury jointly announced comprehensive sanctions against 9 targets linked to the Shikuko compound in Myanmar and 10 telecom fraud groups operating in Cambodia. Then, on October the 14th, the Prince Group case broke. The US and UK jointly sanctioned Cambodia's Prince Group and its founder Chen Zhi, accusing them of operating Asia's largest transnational criminal organization, TCO. The United States immediately launched the largest cryptocurrency seizure in history, confiscating approximately 120,000 bitcoins held by Chen Zhi, valued at around 150 or 15 billion US dollar at the time. Next day, October the 16th, the US Financial Crimes Enforcement Network sanctioned Cambodia's Queen Group, which had laundered money for telecom networks, cutting it off from the US financial system. And on November the 12th, the Scam Center Strike Force was formally established, led by the DOJ and joined by the FBI and the US Secret Service. This was the first interagency task force specifically targeting Southeast Asian telecom fraud. And later, on December the 2nd, the FBI announced that through this task force, it successfully seized the domain names of fake investment websites operated from Myanmar's Taichung. compound. Working with Google and Apple, scam-related apps were removed from app stores. And January the 7th of 2026, Chen Zhi was extradited or deported back to China for investigation. Simultaneously, U.S. authorities advanced legal forfeiture proceedings against his legal assets in the United States and Europe. So then in 2025, the Thailand and Cambodia entered an armed conflict, which was ultimately mediated by President Trump, right? Trump directly used the tariff threats to force a ceasefire. At the same time, CCP publicly called for peace, but behind the scenes used the framework of China-Cambodia law enforcement cooperation to turn the peace agreement into an entry ticket for clearing telecom fraud operations. As figures like Chen Zhi and Shi Zhijiang fell, China exploited the ceasefire to integrate regional security forces using power grid control and extradition treaties to uproot criminal networks and evidence hiding along the border. It is crucial to understand that the conflict zones of this war was exactly where telecom fraud compounds were concentrated. Those telecom fraud groups exploited wartime administrative vacuums and border chaos to move people and launder money. Traffic people, I would say. This explains why President Trump was determined to force a ceasefire. As long as this 800-kilometer border remained at war, dirty money and trafficked people could continue flowing under the cover of artillery fire. Even more critically, evidence of CCP-linked crimes, including human trafficking and organ trading, would be destroyed. That's not what we want, right? And the game continues. As Chen Zhi was being deported back to China, the US government announced another major action. On January the 13th of 2026, Cui Lijie, age 68, the mother of Ji Xiaobo, was formally arrested at Saipan International Airport by US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. Ji Xiaobo is one of the CCP elite's key money laundering executors in Macau and is currently missing. I'm running out of battery. Have to 1 second. Okay. For years, US-controlled Saipan was regarded as a transit hub connecting China's black money with offshore gambling assets. Through the Bua Pacific Casino, Ji Xiaobo's family used the junket operator model to convert massive illegal domestic debts into offshore casino credit, and then launder them through offshore accounts. It's not right there. And Trinidad's arrest at Sampai Airport signals that U.S. federal law enforcement agencies have physically served this illicit financial corridor and detained a key witness. For telecom fraud investigations, the Zhi Xiaobo family holds critical, crucial secrets about the early capital inflows used to build telecom fraud compounds. And the US operation is, in essence, digging into how telecom fraud black money entered the US dollar system. The financial struggle behind these black money channels is one of the ongoing confrontations between the CCP and the US government. Under the pretext of telecom fraud, this battlefield encompasses fraud, money laundering, human trafficking, organ trading, and even drug trafficking, along with the evidence chains that expose them. This is a domain Xi Jinping cares about most and fears the most. And Mao's goal had already exposed at a very early stage the key figures and channels within the CCP involved in this system. So this battlefield cannot be fought without the force of the whistleblower movement. We will continue to watch closely and provide further analysis and follow up on the latest developments. Thank you for your attention. Leave your thoughts